So after creating the UI for the signup page, now we have to add the functionality to it. So let's go to the signup.jsx, and over here you can see some input fields that I'm using Flowbyte normally. And over here we want to put something which is called onChange. So onChange is the attribute, and it's going to call a function which is going to be called handleChange. Okay, and we're going to have to define this because right now if I save it, it's going to give me an error, right? The same thing goes for the email field. We'll have an onChange, and then we'll have it, so CHANGE, and then equal to, and then we have handleChange again. The same thing, handle, and then we have change, and then we initially have this one again, which is this one, and this is onChange again, and then we have equal to, and then we have handle change. Okay, great. So now all of this has input, password, email, and then username. What we could do is we could essentially right here create this function. So we could just say const handle change. Okay, and normally I would just create it as an empty function, so like this. Okay, semicolon. So you can see right now it doesn't contain anything, but what we want to do is we want to have something into this handle change. Okay, so what we could do is we put this event, what was by default, it comes, right, the event E, and then we could track the change. If you look into the console screen, let me go here and over here. So right now what we have here is uncaught reference, handle change is not defined, but after that it was defined, so we could just refresh this, and there's no more errors. But the problem here is that you know, when we want to type something here, we want to track that over here. So we could put in the console, we could say console.log, and then we have e.target.value. Okay, now the thing is, this is like possible. Now if I type my name, I mean, I'm targeting my value, but I'm not sure which one am I talking about, right? I now wrote it everywhere, and I'm not sure whether it's my password, whether it's my email, I don't know what it is, right? And we want to be specific here. So I just realized that, yeah, the password field is okay, but the email field, text field has to be email as well. So look over here. So we have type is text for the email. We want to change this to email, type to email. We want this as text and this last one as password. So we're all good to go here. Now let's go back here, and instead of, you know, e.target.value, what we want to do is we want to basically create a form data where we could put this data. So we could say const form, so basically what we could say const form data, and we have set form data like this, okay, and then we could equal to, then we have use state, and then we have like this, and then we have an empty object like that. So right now, of course, I'm screaming because there's no use state defined. You could have like this, just define use state in here, okay, and then save it. Now the error is gone. Now what you want to do is you want to basically track the change. Set form data will contain the data here. So what we want to do is normally, you know, we got the handle change. We want to track it by the IDs. Now, remember I said that we have a username ID, we have an email ID, and we also have a password ID. We want to now track it through their IDs, and we could now, you know, do that. So specifically, instead of saying console.log, what you could normally say is set form data. So basically, it's a function that was in the use state, and you're using the object operator and spread operator. So whatever the form data has existingly with the new e.target.id, what you had with e.target.value. Okay, so this is pretty amazing. Now you have this form data, but you want to actually view it, right? So the best way to view it is normally just console.log it. So console.log it, console.log form data right now, just to see how it's working. Right now, if I remove this, suppose, okay, so let me just refresh this page. Okay, if I write, I can't see anything. But when I put the console log here, so just 1 second, like this. Now if you can see it right now, it tracks the object. Right now, if I refresh this page, I have an empty object, nothing in this object. But when I type in, suppose my username ID is reflected. When I type my email is being reflected as well, right? The same time I'm typing. And when I'm typing the password, the object is being created. And now this is basically storing the data. we want to submit this data to our database now. So when we press this button, sign up, we want to have this saved in our database. To do this, it's also pretty simple. What we want to do is we essentially have to create another function, and you know, this is the form, which is there is a form field, so it has to be in here somewhere. So there's this label, label div this form. You see this form? This form is this one. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So what we have is this class name, and we want to have one more thing for this form, and that is essentially an onSubmit. Okay, so an attribute which is called onSubmit for forms. And what we want to do is, based on the onSubmit, we want a function called to handle submit. Okay, and now it's going to complain again. Where is this handle submit defined? Well, we'll define it up on the top here again. So we'll have const handle submit and just put e, and then just basically close it like this right now. Initially, it's not going to complain or anything. You can just clear this from here. And now what we want to do is we have this handle submit. So how do we basically save this thing out, right? First of all, when you click on submit, it refreshes the browser. You noticed that. So what we want to do is prevent that from refreshing. So we could do e.prevent, and then we have default, okay, like that. Okay, so now what we want to do is, once we have this, you know, prevent from refreshing, we want to actually try and catch to call our API that we've created. So we use try and catch block, and in the try and catch block, what we want to do is we basically want to call that API we normally created earlier, which is in the basically in the index.js. Remember the auth.controller? I'm talking about this sign up API, and you know, its route is also pretty defined well within the auth.route. So sign up /API/users and then right. So index.js has it /API/user/API/auth and then /sign up. That's what we want to do. So we will basically go back to our page, which is right now the sign up page, and in here what we want to do is we want to call that API. So to call that API, we basically have a const response. Okay, now this response is essentially going to have this await. So await function, and this await function will call this fetch. It's going to use fetch to call this API. So it's basically /API/auth/signup. Okay, and then we basically have this object passed in, where we pass in additional parameters like the method of our object. What is the method for our sign up API? If you remember what the method was, if I go to the extension, which is Thunder Client, and you could go here, remember that I'm using post. So this is my API. I want to basically use this. So remember that there's localhost 3000 in the beginning, and that is something I'm going to talk about right now. So right now, if you go and turn this off, and also if I basically do method, and that is post, okay, and let's see, okay, so post, and then what we want to do is we have the headers, okay, and this is important because we want to send the data as content type, okay. We want to send the data as JSON. So what we will do is basically we have content type, and then we have colon application and /JSON, comma there, right? So comma there, and then you have this headers thing over here. It's complaining because of this await. The reason why it's complaining is that this handle submit has an await, right? What you want to do is, to have this fixed, you have to put async here, like this. Okay, so that's gone. But now we're still looking at this content type application JSON. What we want to do is we want to have the body as well. And this is important. We have to notice that the body has to be JSON. Essentially, what is it? Is that you want to pass it as JSON, but one important thing is, right, we're going and passing it to this API, right? We want to convert it to string, for not just raw JSON, but string the JSON, make it a string, and then basically send the form data as the body, right? That's what we want to do. This is a comma here. So that's normally what it means here. the header. So essentially this was not in here. This is just the header over here, but right after that we have the body. Okay, so we have the headers, and in that we have just content application JSON, and then in the body we have that. So in the header you could basically add more things as well, but right now we're okay with what we have, and we have this body, and what we normally want to do here is we want to put a semicolon. Okay, so I believe now we're gonna have some fixes here, so I'm just gonna clear this as well. So one other thing we want to do is we want to basically see if this actually works. So we could say const data await.response.json, and if it's good, we could just console.log the data, right? So right now let me just refresh this page, and let's try to submit some data. And over here let me just put a catch statement that is just saying the error. So set. But basically we'll do it later. We'll just have, right now I'll just put console.log.error, but later on I'm gonna fix it up. So right now let me just create a user. So let's say dev is the user email, dev@gmail.com, and then we have password, which is 123. Now let's sign up. You can see over here we have post not found. Now the reason why this is happening is that we have an unexpected end of JSON input at handle submit. So the reason why this is happening, first it's saying this problem, and this is calling localhost port 5173, which is our front end. Okay, this is completely different from our backend. Backend is on 3000, so we basically have to create a proxy to say it belongs to the backend. So this is also very easy. What we want to do is we want to go to this server folder, and in the folder we have, in the client folder we have this v.config.js, right? So in the v.config.js file, so what we want to do is really easy stuff here. So what you would have is right in here within the server. So in the v.config.js, you have export default define config, and then we have a parentheses and object. We need a server, okay? And then the server will basically contain a proxy. That's what we have to create. So a proxy, whenever /API exists, like this was /API, whenever a /API exists, and then /API/auth/ whatever, or /API, whatever my backend APIs will be called, I want to tell that we are going to create a proxy and we want to target it. We'll have to prepend this in the front. So http://2/ localhost, and then we have port 3000. This is what we want to port, okay? We want to forward to. And we also have to say secure is false. The reason why we're saying this is because we're not using HTTPS, but we're using HTTP. That's why we are saying that. Let's put a comma here. Let's put a comma here, and let's put a comma here. And I believe everything looks good. And I'll just put a semicolon here. Okay, now you can see over here, server restarted whenever I made that change. That is great. We just have to make sure that we have to restart the server from our front end server. And now, if we do the same thing now, dev@gmail.com. And then we have 1, 2, and 3. Let's create one. Now we don't know for a fact, but what happens is that we got a response. And why am I getting sign up successful? Remember, this was my response. Then I'm actually grabbing it back from my, remember that result that I was getting, response.json, what my server gives? I'm throwing that and saying return it. So that's basically the reason why you're seeing sign up successful. Now, okay, this is all good. But what is this actual reason where, this is not console, right? And this is the backend console. Now, what is the actual reason, like how is this actually stored in the database? I'm gonna prove that it's in the database now. I'm gonna have to log in because I closed it, but it's basically being stored in. But I'm not really sure how I should go about this. There should be a better way to do this. You could actually go into the network tab and you could see the sign up. You see this? This has been created. Whenever you click on, just try it once, sign up, and you could see over here 200 OK status. Okay, this was the localhost port 1573. This is okay because right now it's called, I mean, before even making this request, it puts that proxy configuration that we just set up, this one. So it basically imitates this. Localhost port 3000, and then it puts /API/auth/signup, which is automatically my backend, and that's where it's requesting its post request to. It gets a 200 OK response, and it basically has its option. So over here, look at the response. This is sign up successful. If you look at the payload, basically got all of this info, username, which is from the request payload, dev, email, and password, and this is the thing that we passed. And essentially everything looks amazing, awesome. And this is the application/JSON content type we were talking about, and everything looks amazing. So perfect. And it's in the MongoDB, so you could just check that as well. So right now, I don't know, I just clicked on try free or something. We just need to sign in. So just sign in here, and what we want to do now is one other thing is that we want to tell whether this is actually created or not. We really can't tell, if it's successfully created an account or not. So, to combat this kind of issue, what we could do is create some other additional states. Now, the states that I'm thinking about is an error message if there's an error, and then there's a loading message when you're basically submitting this form. So, first of all, let's create the const, and we'll say error message. So, error message. And then we have error message, right, like this, and then we have a set error message like this, okay. And what we want to do is we want to have use state, and then we want to have null, like so. So because initially we don't want to have an error, right? And the same thing, we want another one which is loading. So we basically say loading, and then we have is set loading, and then we have, and then equal to use and state, and then we have that set to false, so it doesn't load in the beginning. Okay, great. So these things are amazing. Now what we want to do is we want essentially to before what's happening, you could see we want to basically create some preventions. If suppose someone randomly adds a username like spaces and then puts a username, why would someone do that? But we want to prevent something like that from happening. So we put e.target.value.trim. We just put trim in here, and it basically trims all the white spaces. This is all white space. So this is all white space. And normally, if you basically try to do this, right, that's also a white space. So let me look at the inspect right now, and I'll show you what's happening here. So look at console log, network, which is right here. I mean, where are we in the console? I remember we were in the console. Okay, so this is constantly changing. Refresh it one more time, refresh. Okay, so then you can see this object, right? Now suppose if I write my name, right? Space and iftikhar, right? You see that space, right? But what's happening is that it's gonna trim it no matter what. So now let me see one other thing. You see this? It basically trims the existing white space, not the space after the text, so not this. So basically not that. Basically you want to do something else with that. But yeah, my correction is that it only trims the existing front the space that comes before. Okay, anyways, we want to go here, and we want to have these states, which error message and loading, and we want to have to put some kind of state here. So handle submit, and we have to say if the form, so e.prevent default, that's okay. So if we want not form data.username, if the person didn't provide the username, or if the person didn't provide his email, or if the person didn't provide its password, right, his password or her password. So what you want to do is you want to return the message, which is set error, right, set error message. So this is gonna set the message to all fields are required. Perfect. So now this message is there. Now we could also have a try block over here. So this is the try block, right? We want to have a loading state here because we're starting the process here. So when we are initiating this API call, we want to set the loading to true. So we want to set the loading state to true. Okay. Okay. So we also want to set the error message to false or null because right now we just started it, right? We don't want any true error message. Okay, so now once this whole thing is successful, right? Response, this data comes out, and I'm not showing it over here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say if the data is data dot success. Okay, there's actually a parameter here. Success is not is equal to false, right? If it's equal to false, we could just basically return and set an error message saying that the data dot message. Okay, whatever the message error was, it basically returns. Either if it's a successful case, what we could say is set loading to false, because now we are basically out of the API call. This part, if you reach till here, even if you pass this thing, because this thing means you have an error, and if you pass and you reach till here, that means you have done everything successful. And what you want to do is you want to set the loading to false, and you want to say if the response is okay, just navigate to a sign-in page. So if response is basically okay, you want to navigate to the sign-in page. So to navigate to the sign-in page, we need to add use navigate from React Router DOM as well. So if you go over here, we have comma, and we have use navigate. Okay, and then over here we want to do is we basically could define navigate, and we could just say const navigate, and then is equal to use navigate. Now what we could do is over here we could just say navigate, and then we have sign in page. Perfect. Everything looks amazing. And in the catch block over here, what we could do, instead of having the console log, now we could use our state. We could use the set error message state. So set error message to true, right? Because we have an error, or so whatever the error, set error message contains, you know, an error text. So you could basically say something went wrong or something. By dynamic, you could just say error dot message, whatever the message that will appear will be in this state, right? Okay, great. So that is there, and we have set loading to false as well, because now the error is there, and then the loading is no more there as well.